Hi, this is Rachel Nolan, and this is my community sum up for Arapahoe High School and the surrounding cities of Centennial and Littleton, Colorado. So we are the Arapahoe Warriors. That picture on the right is our mascot. We call it the warrior head. It was drawn by an Indian chief in the Arapahoe tribe in Wind River, Wyoming. We have a really long-standing relationship with that tribe, and every year the tribal elders come and teach our students about their history, so it's really cool. Interesting things about Arapahoe: the faculty is 25% alumni, which is strange for a metropolitan suburb. A lot of these people grew up here, they go to college, and then they come back because they loved this community so much. Another thing that's coming up is Warrior Week. That will be in the next 2 weeks. This is my first year at Arapahoe, so I haven't experienced this yet, but it's like a Make-A-Wish week. And so we have chosen a Make-A-Wish recipient, a little boy, and the whole week will be students doing fundraisers and pep rallies and things to raise money for that Make-A-Wish Foundation. We also have a college-like schedule here, so students take classes either Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, or some classes are 4 or 5 days a week. And so it's a really flexible schedule where students can make their own schedule. Even freshmen going into sophomore year get to choose their own schedule. So they sign up for classes, they meet with the counselors and schedule their own classes. And they have a lot of off hours, a lot of free time that's really meant for them to come in and get help from adults in the building. It's really cool, and it's good for teachers too because we get to switch it up during the week. So for me as a science teacher, I teach Monday, Wednesday, Friday is the lecture, and then Tuesday and Thursday is the lab for my class. Our population makeup, we're mostly middle-class white students. I'll get into it later, but we are only about 20% minority, so mostly white students. We have a lot of AP classes. We have a really pretty high graduation rate of 94%, and most of those kids end up going to college. A lot of them go out of state for college, but a lot stay here in Colorado too. LPS, that's Littleton Public Schools, our district, and Arapahoe High School in particular tend to be kind of anti-change, and I'll get into that later in this presentation, but this community is very independent, and they value their decision-making on their own and really don't like being told what to do and told that things should change. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic here. So the population characteristics, Arapahoe is 40% open enrollment. So when I'm talking about the community, I'm really focusing on the city that we are in, which is Centennial, and the city that is our closest border, which is Littleton, Colorado. But we have kids coming from up to an hour away. The Denver public schools are not as highly regarded. They don't have as high test scores. They're a little rougher. So a lot of upper class families in downtown Denver will open enroll their students here at Arapahoe. Like I said, 94% high school graduation is our adult community as well. And then in the adult community, 55% of our adults have a bachelor's degree or higher. The parents have mostly stable employment and good jobs. I'll get into the unemployment in a moment, but just surveying some of my students, their parents tend to be doctors, lawyers, engineers, bankers, business managers, a lot of stay-at-home moms, but it's really, there's very low unemployment and good jobs here. Only 5% of the families at my school are eligible for free or reduced lunch, so that shows you a little bit about the income of my community. We have 2,200 students at Arapahoe High School. We are the largest high school of the 3 in my district, and the whole district has 15,700 students. We're actually a very small district. We have some really mega districts around here that have 2 or 3 times as many students in them. The district as a whole is 27% minority, but my school is only 17% minority, and of those minority students, most are Hispanic. The population is very stable. I looked at some graphs. Our senior class is the biggest currently, but like 4th and 5th grade classes are also big, and the kindergarten class is not much smaller than any other class. So really our population of students is staying very steady. And the median age of residents of Centennial, where my school is located, is 43 years old, which is slightly older than Colorado at large. Communication channels. I'm new to this area. I moved from California pretty recently, so a lot of the next information I've gotten from personal surveys of my coworkers who have lived here a really long time. He said most of them get their news from the school newsletter for school news, just the local TV news, and then we have a local newspaper called the Littleton Independent, but that's really for local stories. Community groups, we have some churches around here. We have a lot of large church groups, and then the Fellowship of Christian Athletes is a pretty active group here on campus. When we get into the elementary schools, the PTO is very involved, and they are going to be the main group that's going to drive change at the school. But really, there's no groups that are very vocal. We're not very political. Again, this area values their independence. Coming from a school district that there were a lot of groups that were very political and very vocal and pumped a lot of money into campaigns and things like that, this is really a change for me. And if I were doing this about my previous community, I'd have a lot to say about community groups. But here, they're very quiet, if there are any at all. And I talked to a teacher who has lived here his whole life, and he's been teaching here at Arapahoe for 20 years, and he went here, and he couldn't think of a single community group that's very active. Knowing our leadership, so Arapahoe County has been unincorporated until the 90s, and I learned this today, again, from surveying people who have been in the area, but Centennial was unincorporated until the 90s when a neighboring city basically annexed some unincorporated area, and so the area of Centennial was afraid that they would start losing tax revenue if other cities annexed them. So they formed a city, and this teacher said that she was here at school when that happened, and they went on winter break, and then they came back and they were in Centennial. So this happened when the fiscal year changed, and so that's really interesting. There are 9 city council members, including the mayor. We got a new mayor this election season. And really, I don't know very much, and no one knows very much about city council. They kind of go about their business. They don't do anything radical. They're quiet and pretty apolitical. Our community leaders, the superintendent here has been here for 4 years. He's very well trusted. He's known for turning around a neighboring school district that had some trouble. He's very accessible. He's responsive to communication. When I asked for an interview with him for a previous class, he wrote back right away, wanted to meet with me in person. He's a really nice guy, and I think the parents really trust him. And again, we're coming back to that independence. The community here doesn't like change. They don't like someone who's going to be an authoritarian and come in and impose their own values. So really, he's pretty hands-off unless anything really needs to be done. Some economic conditions. Centennial has 2.3% unemployment. Our median household income is $71,000, which is a good bit higher than the state average. Our median single-family home price is $443,000, which has leapt a lot in the last 5 years. Denver and the suburbs went through a housing boom that's just now slowing down, but that's probably raised $100,000 in the last 5 years or so. Our most common industry is professional, scientific, and professional services. It says professional twice. That was copied from city data from Centennial. And so really it's just management and sales and office jobs. Our second most common is retail. And we have a big tech center area nearby, so there's a lot of engineers too. They might not necessarily live in Centennial, but I have students whose parents are engineers too. We also have a lot of outdoor space. We have parks, hiking trails. We are right near a canal trail that runs through several cities, and that's where our cross-country team likes to run. Our political structure, our per pupil funding is a little less than $10,000, which is far less than the state average of almost $13,000. We had a bond measure this last election that failed. It was 60% opposed, but it would have updated our old facilities, added FTE to reduce our student-teacher ratio and class sizes. I would have gotten a raise. Unfortunately, that did fail, and every proposed tax increase in Colorado this last election failed. So we have a law here in Colorado called Tabor, and basically it says that for any tax increase, the community has to approve it 60% by 60% ratio. And so Colorado really struggles with funding because no one ever votes to increase taxes. The area in general politically is like purple to blue. We do have a lot of Democrats, and I know that our area went for the Democrat in the last presidential election. But for some reason, fiscally, this area is very conservative, and they really are against raising taxes. And so it was a huge letdown to us working in the school community that we didn't get that additional revenue. The school board works really well with the superintendent. They all seem to be friends the times that I've seen them. They laugh and they get along, and they really don't argue very much. And again, coming from a very argumentative school board where parents would come and picket and yell, and the school board meetings were very intense, this is nothing. It's really, everything seems to run really well. Social tension. So again, my school is only 17% minority. We really don't have any gang activity. Our cliques tend to be like the sports teams and the religious groups. So like that FCA, the Christian kids tend to hang out together in a clique. And then, yeah, the sports teams, the cheerleaders, just like most high schools. I do notice some anti-LGBTQ discrimination and anti-Semitism. I really think that it comes from a lack of exposure and misunderstanding. I don't think it comes from a place of hate. It still really bothers me, and I make sure to speak up, and I've referred some students to the counselors that I'm concerned about. I came from a really, really diverse school where we had lots of Muslim students and Jewish students and LGBTQ kids. And so here it really makes me sad that kids don't know anyone like that, and so they don't understand what that's like. And then I think there are parents who are more conservative around here, especially religious parents, and so the kids need to be educated a little bit more about people who are different than themselves. And again, our political makeup is mixed. We went 55% Democrat, 40% Republican in the last presidential election. So you could really call Colorado a blue state. Power structures. There are not really any micropolitics here. So interviewing a couple of my coworkers, they said it's never been a thing, which is cool. And multicultural issues. So this picture is what I was talking about earlier, the Wind River Arapaho tribe coming down to our school to visit and do some traditional dances. And I haven't seen that yet because that happens in the spring, but I'm really looking forward to that. We also have some local restaurants around here that really display our school memorabilia and sports jerseys, things like that. And we do also have a war veteran mural in the school. And so that is kind of the extent of our multiculturalness, but it's really heavily focused on that Native American relationship. For public opinion, people seem to really like this school and this school district. They think we have a good job. Especially with our 40% open enrollment, if people didn't like us, we would see a huge decline in enrollment. So that's a pretty good measure of how people think of us, is they want to come and have their kids here. People do feel that schools should be funded better, but for some reason they don't want to be taxed in order to achieve that. And so that Tabor law, again, the governor is not able to raise taxes without public approval, and so I'm not sure if that'll ever change without a huge political effort to get people to vote on the next tax increase. And we, as a union, really worked at that, and it fell pretty far short, so I'm not sure what will change that. And so that is my community. This has been really great to learn about, a community that's new to me, and I hope to keep learning more.